Hello, this is Conrad Nunez with the MHC Healthcare Podcast, where we get to know the people behind the roles here at MHC. Our next guest has a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology and a Master's of Science in Counseling Psychology. He served in the United States Air Force for 8 years and has been with MHC for over 4 years. Please welcome Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Michael MacBrayne.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome. You excited for the podcast?
Yeah, I've seen all of them, actually. So,
or
at least listened to them on my ride to work.
That's cool. Thank you. Yeah. You're probably the third person. So the purpose of the podcast is to get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm originally from the Southern California area, like LA area. After high school, I joined the Air Force. Did that for about 7 years. Was a firefighter there. Spent most of my time overseas. During that time, toward the end, I met my wife online. Actually, she was living in Yuma, teaching. And so we got married, and I wanted to get out and go back to school. So we ended up moving to Springfield, Missouri, which is where we were for about 12 years. During that time, a couple different changes in direction as far as career goes, but I ultimately settled on becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner. During that time also, we had 2 boys. My oldest is 12, and the younger one is 10. So
when was it right out of high school you went into the military?
Yeah, about 6 months after I ended up leaving for basic training.
How was that?
Well, comparatively to the other branches, I guess it's the easiest, but for me, it's the hardest thing I'd ever done at that time. So,
was it just the challenges of just being away from home and then in the being in the fire and all that?
Not even so much that, but just when especially basic training, there's just a lot of lack of sleep. They really wanted to push you in that area, so constantly moving, constantly having to do stuff. There's no time to just sit around. There's no watching TV or anything. It's just go all the time. And getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep maybe is pretty stressful.
Which is all in preparation, right? To be prepared to in case you do get 2 hours of sleep and there's a fire, you gotta go.
Right. Well, even in that situation, it wasn't for firefighting because most of the people I was in basic training with weren't going to fire academy. They're going somewhere, some other job. But just in general, having to deal with a lot of stressful situations, sleep deprivation, just trying to prepare you for that.
You were in it for 7 years though, so.
7 years, 1 month, 11 days. Who is counting?
Nobody's counting.
Nobody's counting.
And you met your wife while you were in the military? Yeah,
so about 7 months or so before I got out, I knew I was going to get out and go back to live in LA. I was in England at the time, so I'd wanted to find a friend or so. That's just the main goal. Find some friends, just people to talk to, get to know, and so.
And she was teaching in Yuma, Arizona.
She was, yeah.
A small world. That's where I'm from.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up. Yeah, exactly. All the food restaurants that they have, they're really good Mexican food.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And then you guys just got together, and that was it.
Yeah. So so basically the goal was that help me get my degree, and then she could stay home. She wanted to stay home and raise a family. So that's the goal, and that's what we did. And so I got my bachelor's in psychology, master's in counseling psych, and I did that for about first I was supervising caseworkers for about a year, a little over a year. I didn't really care for that too much, but then I was able to get a counseling job, and I did that for about a month and realized it wasn't for me, too subjective. So that's when I decided to go back, and I went for become a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So. And
that seemed to work for you then?
Yeah, it's becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner, or at least the job itself, is very objective. At least within the field of mental health, it's very objective compared to, say, counseling. In the medical field as a whole, we're actually the most subjective of the fields because a lot of things can cause depression and anxiety, a lot of ways of fixing it. So it's a lot of let's try this, see how this works, as opposed to heart meds or any other kind of medicine where it's like we give you this, we know this is going to happen kind of thing.
Wow. Now we've known each other for a couple years, and you've picked up on some hobbies.
Since I've met you,
yeah.
I picked up on some hobbies. Yeah, about 2 years ago. Next month will be 2 years ago. I started taking some jiu-jitsu courses.
Right, because you were running and going to the gym when we were working together in the same clinic, and then that got a little too boring, I guess.
Yeah, I've done periods of exercising as an adult, here and there, last for several months, maybe a year at most, and then not do it for 6 months to a couple of years, and then But running usually was my thing. I was kind of into it a little bit. I knew I just needed to do it. It's more like, taking your medicine because you need to. But when I found jiu-jitsu, that's when I knew it was like I could do this every day.
It wasn't medicine anymore. Because you said exercise and running was like medicine, like, you have to do it.
Oh, right,
You just lose that, you fall in love with it.
Yeah, I mean, because I've never really had a hobby my whole life. I've always just kind of like, well, this is kind of interesting. I guess I'll do this a little bit, but nothing really, passionate about as far as hobbies go.
Why is that? Because you're so busy, probably.
No, I mean, I don't know. I was always into like collecting movies, back in my single days, back when I was in the Air Force. But I mean, that's sort of a hobby, but at the same time not. You can just spend all day watching movies. That's not healthy for you. But as far as actually learning a skill, or, a set of skills and doing it and enjoying it all day long, I just hadn't found anything like jiu-jitsu.
Do you like it because you'll never perfect it? I feel like it's such a challenge.
And that's the same reason I think I like that is the reason why I like medicine. It's there's always research. There's always something new to learn. You can learn about. I mean, there's just the depth of psychiatry, which is you could get lost in that forever. But there's also the breadth of just medicine in general and human biology. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. I mean, you never stop learning. I mean, you get a little better here and there. You might be known for the guy who does this well or that skill well, gets out of this position. But yeah, you're always learning more. It's like a universe of knowledge out there, just that topic alone.
Just keeps going.
Yeah.
And for MHC, you see patients with mental health issues, right?
Yeah, so probably anxieties, the umbrella of anxieties, PTSD, OCD, generalized anxiety, social phobia, and then of course, less common, or probably fairly common, but not too many people come in for, flying anxiety or, arachnophobia, anything like that. Those are pretty rare, but a lot of people have some form of anxiety. Of course, mood disorders are pretty common as well. Depression's pretty common.
You said flying anxiety, like the fear of flying.
Fear of flying, yeah.
Okay.
It's not very common that they come to see me for that reason. Usually they just go see their primary care doctor, get a couple of meds, and then they're good for a year or two.
When it comes to anxiety, is there a chemical in your brain that just makes things a lot worse than they probably are?
Well, so the most common brain chemical is glutamate, and that's excitatory in nature, so it kind of speeds things up. And then when it comes to anxiety, when you're trying to calm things down, we try to increase the opposite of the glutamate, which is the GABA, which kind of slows things down. So kind of trying to find that balance there and adjust the GABA sometimes can help with anxiety. That's more of the immediate time. So you're looking at benzodiazepines for that. But there's other options as well, ones with less risk. I use a lot of hydroxyzine. It's a antihistamine, so it kind of slows things down a little bit, makes people a little drowsy. Because it's hard to be, both excited and drowsy at the same time. It just doesn't work that way. So there's that medication, sometimes some heart medication, sometimes older antidepressants like trazodone I use sometimes at low doses, which cause sedation. Use that people take that to help in the moment. But those are just as needed medications. Generally, my main goal is to try to fix the anxiety using more maintenance medications. Medications that people are probably more familiar with, like sertraline, known as Zoloft, or escitalopram, known as Lexapro, and others as well.
So, I recently got diagnosed with anxiety, and not that I didn't know, it's maybe like I just wasn't either prepared or I just didn't think I needed the medication. Now that I'm on it, it's like day and night. Mm-hmm. So, now that I'm on it, it seems like maybe you can recognize the behavior and get better at it. I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, can I eventually get off this medication and then be able to control my anxiety without it?
Yeah, so what I tell all my patients is, as good as medication is, there's something that's better, and that's therapy. If you have anxiety, really the main thing is therapy. Now, a multimodal approach is what we call, so medication, therapy, exercise, proper diet, get enough sleep, and other things. Doing all those things is the best thing to do. But if you were to break it down to individual treatments, then the therapy is really the most important thing you can do. Therapy more than likely be a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy of some sort, where you're learning just kind of how to look at your problems, how you respond to them, learning new coping skills, relaxation techniques are really helpful. Probably more on the behavioral health side, behavioral therapy side to really reduce that anxiety.
So it kind of feels like you're learning how to deal with the triggers that may cause that, right? I mean, you can get anxiety for anything at this point, right? Whether it's you're sitting in traffic or you're going to present at a big meeting. So,
yeah,
is it just control?
Yeah, a lot of it. Well, I mean, if you look at like the number one treatment, say for a lot of the phobias or PTSD, it's exposure therapy. At least last time I checked the research, I haven't seen the research on that therapy in a few years, but last I checked, it was prolonged exposure therapy, which basically is, I mean, it's very unfortunate how our bodies work this way, but the best way to get through high anxiety causing situations is to go through the high anxiety causing situation. So just exposing yourself repeatedly over and over again. I don't know if you took any intro level psych courses, and most people do, Pavlov dogs, right, and the salivating. And so it's kind of just really rewiring that mechanism so that when you are confronted with the anxiety causing situation, the paired response of the feeling anxious doesn't occur with it, and so eventually it does go away.
So it's just a matter of exposure and time.
And then sometimes it can come back, in which case repeat the process and maybe learn some new relaxation techniques. Other things as well that you can do, like I said, diet and exercise are important as well. So I always try to emphasize those.
Could you imagine like somebody has severe anxiety and then having to face something that gives them severe anxiety? That's hard. It's difficult.
It is. That's why a lot of times in therapy, I think a lot of therapists will do like a structured approach, so it can kind of slowly work up to it. Start with if anxiety is driving in traffic, then it might just be going outside and looking at your car. The next step is getting inside your car for a minute, and so they kind of slowly expose themselves to those stressful causing situations little by little. So if they could put things like on a 0 to 10 scale, 0 is looking at the car and 10 is going downtown Tucson, or maybe driving to LA or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
to get involved in that. But you slowly work people up to it, and usually pair that with some relaxation techniques, deep breathing, guided imagery, probably not while they're driving, not close your eyes and think of some quiet, relaxing place.
But so it's preventing from being overwhelmed, right? Because you're first going to look at the car, like you break that whole process into little pieces is not so bad.
Yeah, that's generally the best way. I mean, they can do it's called flooding. If you want to, like say, if you have a short amount of time, you just need to fly somewhere for someone's wedding or graduation, you need to get through it, then you can probably find a therapist that might help you with flooding. I remember when I was in my master's in counseling, the professor had this snake, Daisy, that he liked to keep in the lab, the science lab, for whenever he had this class every semester, and he would find out what people were scared of snakes, and he would bring the snake in and kind of have them, he would hold the snake around him and kind of walk up to the person 20 feet away, take one step, and then just stay there for a minute and see how they kind of, once they start to calm down, he'll take another step forward. And so over the course of time, it's really just flooding yourself with that same concept of kind of getting used to it by it being present so much that eventually that with the feared response not happening of the snake biting me or whatever, then eventually the anxiety goes away.
So now that we're talking about like different issues, how's this pandemic pan out to like other issues that have been going on for years, like, or decades or centuries, which is like the fear of snake and flights and heights and things like that? Because we're all experiencing this. We've never been in this before, not since the Spanish flu. So was it in school? Was there anything you could think of that maybe prepared you for all of this?
I mean, really, it's just more the same. Maybe more severe as far as the cases that normally would come in are now, a little more severe on that scale. And then people might be adding on an extra diagnosis, so maybe they just had bipolar, and now they're coming with bipolar and anxiety. So there's increase in number and increase in severity, but really the nature of the diagnoses doesn't really change. It's still the same issue.
Have you been busier now?
I feel like when the pandemic first started and we kind of went to a more telehealth approach, I wasn't seeing the increase as much as a lot of other people were, but it did eventually catch up. So by about summertime of last year, I did notice my numbers were improving or increasing. I think a lot of it is just because the simplicity or the ease of access with telehealth that brings. I mean, I've had literally people, roll over from one side of the bed to the other and then turn on their phone like, hey, I'm here,
Right.
So there is that accessibility. So that's been helpful in that regard to be able to get people in the door more, so to speak, but without having to leave their house. But it's there's waxes and wanes. There's times and there's higher numbers and times there's lower numbers, but overall it's increased.
So now that you've been how long have you been a nurse practitioner for?
So I started here in April of 2017. I was licensed just a few months before that.
So being aware of like what all these triggers and these mental challenges and issues, how does that play in your role personally? Like, do you catch yourself and like, am I doing this? Like, do I fit this? Like, do you self-diagnose yourself at all?
That problem in medical school, right? Where it's like they come across every diagnosis and they think they have
right.
it. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm able to notice not even so much diagnoses, but although that probably has been increased as well, but just behavior patterns I see people make, and I'm like, seeing this patient does this and it's not really effective for them, so maybe I should, can I start questioning my own, like maybe I could do this better, or I could, stop doing that, improve my, mental health or health in general this way. So that's why I like psychiatry, or probably even medicine in general, I'm guessing, because it makes, it helps, if it's done right, I think it helps both parties, because you're helping that person with the medication, maybe some recommendations for how they can, live their life. If they have definite disparities in health, but it also helps me. I'm able to grow. Learn to not make assumptions, and to slow down my thinking, and try to think on a problem longer. Try to think from different angles to see if I can figure it out.
Interesting. No, that's great. I think that's why it makes you such a good provider. So, working all day, clients after clients, how do you unwind? Like what? Because everybody, gets their cup. I call it a cup. So you start in the morning with an empty cup, and then people start pouring, and then by the end of the day you're full. Whether it's like you're stressed out or you've listened to all these problems, and then how do you empty out that cup? You don't take it home. Like what are some of the things you do to, I guess, unstress?
Yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu is a big one. I mean, it's probably, it's good to have several different pursuits, so jiu-jitsu is kind of that physical pursuit for me. I also like some cognitive pursuits. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, obviously, like I said, yours. I also listen to other ones like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, some other scientists. There's an evolutionary biologist. Can't think of his name right now, but he's pretty interesting, called Dark Horse podcast. But just several different podcasts that kind of stretch my mind in different areas. Also, recently, about a month and a half ago, started an app called Duolingo to learn another language. So nice. I'd taken a semester of Arabic when I was in the Air Force, and so I really enjoyed it. So I started using that app again. It's free, and just little 5 minutes here and there, and every day. So you're saying like do things you enjoy, just to kind of unwind. That makes sense. You enjoy, but also that stretch you and cause you to do things you normally wouldn't do. That's interesting because you're also adding the component of growing and strengthening your weaknesses while you're unwinding, and then you're doing something you're enjoying. Yeah, so it's like it's just stretching yourself in different areas: physical, mental, spiritual. I'm also spiritually involved, and that pursuit's definitely been very helpful for me. I do encourage a lot of my patients as well to do that. I don't obviously point to one specific belief, but just encourage that activity because it is helpful for a lot of people. Wow. What I also like to do on this podcast is I use this platform to thank you. I know we've known each other for a few years, and we've had conversations, and I go in there and I'm like, Michael, this and that, and you're like, well, maybe this and that. So it was always good to go to you with a non-judgmental point of view, so that has always helped, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for all the work you do here at MHC. I mean, I can't imagine, all day helping people, and then at the same time trying to better yourself
at the same time is quite the challenge, because nobody thinks about that. You know what I mean? Like, you think about like, XYZ's happen at work, and then I just go home and unwind. But like, you really take it to the next level where like I can grow, learn something, and also unwind. That's something I think I'll probably use from now on. I mean, that's huge. I never thought about that. I thought it was just kind of like cookie cutter, like this is work, and then you leave work at work, and then you either go to the gym or unwind. But the fact that you like want to learn a new language and all that, that's a great approach.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I just try to look at it as a matter of it. I don't see it as this was a hard thing I really didn't want to do, so now I need to unwind from it. It's just everything is just a opportunity to learn and grow, and they all seem like fun to me, so that's why I do them.
I'm
you
happy.
still biking? You still bicycling?
I just picked up cycling again a month and a half ago. I took a hiatus for about a year. So instead of like having all this free time with COVID, I got busier, and then I would see it and I would just look at it, and it was such a melancholy feeling of like, why'd you stop riding? Because it was such a good feeling while I was doing it, because it challenges you and you're riding and you hit all these hard parts and you hate it, but then you hit this euphoric speeds and then you're just focusing on the road. So it has been nice to be back into it. Yes.
Are you using those training wheels I got you?
Yes, I am, because I already broke my arm and I learned my lesson. That was when I had just broken it when we were in the same clinic.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
I remember you. You got me training wheels for Christmas? That's right.
The little prank gift there.
That's right. I remember that now. That was very touch and warming.
You're like, don't.
I'm like, how am I supposed
funny.
to? Yeah, with my cast. So, yeah, it's nice to be back. It really is. It's helped me throughout this whole journey of like trying to work in marketing and then volunteer, like working with the volunteers and the vaccines, and having my hands, trying to put myself in different situations where I can help the community and everything has been a challenge itself, but finding that release on the bike has been great. It really has. So
It's like your jiu-jitsu.
It really is, because you can never really be good at it. And elite cyclists weigh maybe 140 pounds, so I weigh 100 more than that. So I have plenty of work to do and growth if I want to continue biking. But yeah, it is. You can always go faster. You can always climb faster. So there's always that challenge you're going to find. So it's good. I love it.
Yeah.
So thanks for being on. I hope to
Yeah.
have you on again.
Definitely.
I appreciate you for making the time. I know it was a quick, less than a week turnaround. I knew you'd be flexible,
Yeah.
and it worked.
Yeah,
And I
good.
appreciate that.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you to our guest, Michael MacBrayne. For more information on our behavioral health services, please visit us at our website at mhchealthcare.org or call us at 682-1091.